All right, so last time what we did is when I click in this game view at the bottom and I hit space, it cycles us through these arrays. Now, generally, um, if you're looking at this in another programming language, arrays are pretty fixed in size, right? Only in Unity can you go in and you can add an extra element by typing in like 5, and then you get an empty element. You could type in, you know, whatever. Here, I'll type in LOL, and then I press play, and then I hit spacebar. If you're going to do any sort of arrays that expand or contract in size, you really want to use something called a list, which is really just an array, but it allows you to add to it and grow. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to go ahead and just right click and remove this component. And I'm also going to introduce you to how to use buttons in this tutorial. And a lot of times, if you're watching any of my other tutorials, what we're doing is we're using buttons as a way to, like, you click the start button, it loads a level, or create a character customization system. So anyway, let's go to UI here and then just add a Text Mesh Pro button here. So now we have a button, and I'm just going to place this button. Let me hit W, or you can select this move tool. I'm just going to place it below my new text object. Let's move this up just a little bit. And really, you can just look down here to see. And then let's actually, I'm going to hit R and just scale this up a little bit. And for the text of this button, I'll put add, let's see, we'll use this to add elements to list, or button add elements button. And then for the button text, which is here, we'll just call it add element. And then, there we go. There's our add elements text, and there's our add element. So we would click on this. So if I press play now, you can see I click on it. There's also a highlight color. So as you kind of go over it, let's see. There's a press color. If I press it, I can, maybe make it green as I highlight over it, turn it pink, things like that. Anyway, so those are some elements. And I did that in play mode, and you can see it reset back to the original thing. And down here, we have something similar to our text field where you can see we have an on-click element here. Now, something else I'd like to do is let's move this text down here, actually. And what we can do is move our button up and our text field up. What I'll do is, I think this might be cool, is let's go to UI here and let's add a Text Mesh Pro input field. So we'll kind of make this so we're just kind of keep building on the previous knowledge. And in this field here for the text area, you can see here's a placeholder. So we can do like enter word to add. And so this will just add the word that we type in here to the list. And then we have this button here that they click, and then maybe it will update the word down at the bottom. So like here's our text, and let's just move it this way so it's kind of in the order. And then move this up here and then input. And then there's our input field. All right, so let's right click in our scripts folder and then create another C# script and name it list example. All right, and I'm going to add this list example to our canvas. And let's just, see, this is just like I said before. Let's see if it loads. Let's try one more time. There we go. And sometimes you'll get that where it says it cannot find the script. So either it didn't load or the name doesn't match the class name. So let's go ahead and open this up. Okay, so you can see I have two public fields here. One is for my input field, and then one field for the names that I want to display. So let's go ahead and save that. Let's go back to Unity. And on that canvas here, let's go ahead and grab our input field and then our text box down at the bottom. We'll just put, just so that we remember, names text field. So here back in Canvas, I'm going to grab my names text field. So here we have our input field and our names text field. So now that we have access to those, we can do some coding to update those two. All right. All right, so I went ahead and made a private list, and this is a little different than arrays, right? There's no brackets, but the way you create a list is you write the word list, and then whatever the list can hold, and then the name of your list. And then we're allocating new memory to a list array of strings. Okay, so we have this new method we created called add names to list. And the first element in this, for the first line of code or statement, is we're going to get the name from the input field. So name to add. So we have this input field here. So if I type in Alex, it's going to say stored inside of name to add. If, remember this exclamation point means not. If our string, which is the name to add here, is not empty or null. So we're checking if the input is not empty, we're going to add a name to our list. So we're going to do names. And what's different again is you're not using an element here, like 0, 1, 2, 3 to add something. You're using the keyword add. So we have a list called names, and we're going to add whatever is from that input field into that list. Actually, maybe we should just make this public. But I don't know if it's going to update in real time in our view, but we'll make it public there. So add names to our list, and then clear the input field because we have a word in there called Alex or whatever we put in there for the names. After we add that and we press enter, we need to clear that input field. And then we're going to update the display. Now, update names display, what that's going to do is this method. Remember we did method calls? It's going to call this method here. And all it's going to do is right off the bat, remember we always set it to an empty string, the text box, so that we have something in there. And then we're going to loop through each name in the list and add it to the display text. So this is a for each loop. This is different than other loops in the past. So all this says is we're making a new variable called name here. So for each name, this is a string, in names. If you already forgot what names is, that's the name of our list. So what we're doing here is we're going to copy. So names display, which is this empty text box here, right? This is what's displaying remember our name display.text equals this. This is shorthand for writing this. Name display.text equals name display.text plus name. This is shorthand notation. So it's saying whatever text we have in there equals the other text equals the new text plus the name. The name, remember, name is what we're storing as we go through each one. And this is different. This is the new line character. What that does, that makes a new line. It separates it by new line. We could separate it with a space and a comma, but this moves it to the new line and adds a new name. So I'm going to leave it like this for shorthand. And again, Google these, search these. If something doesn't make sense, ask me. But we have to do a couple things. Remember, this one right here adds the name to the list, right? So we need to, we have to use our input field for this one. And then this updates the name of the list. And then what this is going to do is essentially add the names to the list in our scene. So we've got to hook both of these up. So let's go back into Unity and set this up. See, one last thing is these both have to be public here. Just making sure so that we can access them. There we go. Okay, now let's jump back to Unity. All right, so in our canvas, remember we have this empty list of names, and then we have an input field in this one. All we really need to do at this point is here's our button. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. I'm going to grab my canvas and drop it here. And then inside of here, I'm going to go to list example. And I'm going to look for that name, add names to list. Just to review briefly, if I call this add names to list by clicking the button, it's going to add that, and it's going to call this method down here. So it's going to go through all that code we talked about earlier. It's also going to take into account whatever I put inside of there, and I'm going to add it to the list. So let's save this. And now that should work, and we should be able to see our names grow. One thing I want to do is kind of shrink this down a little bit. Let's shrink this text down because actually let's do a little bit of reorganizing. Let's put this over here. I'm going to hit T and just kind of like that. And I'll bring these two input button over here. And that way we can see this kind of updating in real time. All right, let's press play. I'm going to type in my first word down here, which is Alex. and you can see it added that element. The next one is food, add element, and it's just using this add instead of the element here. So names dot thing, add name to add, and it's adding it to that field. I would suggest go through and handwrite all the lines of the code and rewrite this just to make sure you understand it. But really, the whole takeaway from this is that you use add. Things are being passed in. You know, this from here, the input text field, it's going to store it here, and we just keep adding it. And this for each loop is pretty good because it just, this variable here just cycles through each time we run through it and it just stores it in there. So we could pretty much just keep going with this. Hummus, and you can see that it's updating it here. Boom. And it just keeps adding it to the list. And that's it for this video.